Okay, so what we're going to do now is basically going to demonstrate a normal takeoff and pattern procedures to you. So put your feet on the floor. I've got the controls. And this is a crosswind takeoff, it looks like, because we had a little bit of crosswind, since it's 190, 14 gusts to 18 knots today. So it's always aileron into the wind when we're doing our crosswind takeoff. The important thing is when I'm getting ready for takeoff, I want to position the airplane towards final. The reason why we do that is so we can see other landing traffic. You don't want to have what we call a runway incursion, or basically where we just come onto the runway and someone's landing. Maybe someone's not communicating with us, and they just decide to land in. Maybe they're on another frequency. So you always want to think about that. So for the takeoff, basically we're going to position on the runway. I'm going to slowly increase power and basically rotate 55 knots. And throughout the whole pattern, I'm going to be making radio calls, and I want you to kind of think about that and recall it. And I'll work with you on the next one, and you're going to repeat back everything that I've done. All right? Leesburg traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, taking off runway 17, remaining in the pattern. Okay. All right, so once we get up to the runway here, we're going to check for a few things. We're going to make sure that oil temperature and oil pressure in the green, and airspeed alive at 55 knots, all right? Because that's our rotation speed. Otherwise, if the airspeed doesn't come up, you might have a pitot failure.
Right.
Okay. Oil temperature, oil pressure in the green. Airspeed's alive. 40 knots, 15 to go. We're up on 50 and 55 knots, and we rotate. And it's always important to hold the right rudder throughout the climb, because the torque is going to roll you to the left.
Right, yeah.
About 800 feet in the pattern, I'm going to make a left turn to crosswind. The crosswind, once I get up to altitude, I'm going to bring back the power to 2,000 RPM. And that's a good power setting, because that gets us about 100 knots in the pattern. This airplane. So we're coming up on 800. It's my turn, and I'll make a radio call once I've turned. Always important to hold that right rudder, because you still have torque acting towards the left. Values for traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, left crosswind runway 17 Leesburg. Hold that right rudder all the way in, otherwise that's coming out. We're coming up on 1200, and I'm going to make my left turn to downwind. Leesburg traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, downwind runway 17 Leesburg. Always holding the right rudder all throughout this climb and turn to downwind. Now I see how the wind's already kind of pushing us a little bit away. So it's a little bit of strong wind today. It's actually not too bad. It's at 10 knots from the west. Now I'm going to bring back the power to 2,000 RPM. You can see the visibility out over there. That's why we decided to do pattern today. It's not really good visibility. Yeah, flying. And look, I'll bring it down to 2,000. 100 knots, 2,000 RPM. So when we're beam the runway, or you see the runway numbers, this is where we're going to put 10 degrees of flaps. Now, remember when I was telling you about the Fowler flaps having a pitch moment? Watch what happens when I put 10 degrees of flaps in. The airplane's nose starts coming up, and it starts blowing up pretty quick, and that can surprise a lot of people. So the best thing to do is just get that nose down. Right? You want to put some pressure on that, before that, those flaps come all the way down. So I got 10 degrees of flaps in, 85 knots. And when I turn my base leg, it's going to be 75. So 85, 75, 65 for landing. 65 is a magic landing speed. Values for traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, left base runway 17 Leesburg. Okay, and then I'm in the white arc, or at least the white line. I did 20 degrees of flaps. Okay, and here I'm on base. I got the nice runway in view over here. And we're going to get on the PAPI here in a second. Turn to final. And clear final. Leesburg traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, turning final runway 17 Leesburg. I'm going to bring full flaps in. I got 4 white lights. What does 4 white lights mean?
You're too high.
Too high, right? So I can do 2 things. I can reduce some power and then capture that glide path. Or I can just descend, but I want to get my speed down a little bit. As we're coming in, you want to maintain the 2 white, 2 red. That's important. A little fast, so I'm going to slow it down just a little bit here. I'm going to try to get down to 1500 RPM, and I'll get us down a little bit slower. We're coming up on 70 knots, looking for about 65, a little slightly high. There it is. And so I'm looking for the aiming point markings, which, you know, the 2 white boxes up top there, that's what I'm looking for right now. I'm 67 knots. And once I start getting towards that area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start slightly pitching back, kind of like at a level flight altitude right here.
Yeah.
Going to kind of remain in ground effect. And then I'm going to slowly pitch up just a little bit. I'm not going to do a quick pitch. It's just very gentle. And I'm going to try to keep this nose high pitch right here, slightly above. And you can hear the horn. And we just land, make a nice little landing. And I bring the power to idle because you don't want to keep that power all the way in. And it's okay if you use most of the runway here. It's not a big deal. And, you know, we'll taxi off right here. And the other important thing is when I clear the taxiway, I always look to my right, center, and left so that there's no traffic that's, you know, because you don't want to have a taxiway incursion.
Right.
So we're going to bring the flaps up now, okay? The strobe and landing light comes off, okay? And as you see, the transponder went to ground because if you're less than 35 knots, it'll go to ground. So we make a call. Leesburg traffic 677 Juliet Alpha, clear the active. Okay, like that. So now we're going to